Live from Lagos, Nigeria, this is News Central. I'm Felicity Ezewike. The top stories tonight. Supreme Court affirms President's powers to suspend elected officials and declare state of emergency in any part of Nigeria. Former Attorney-General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, requests EFCC Chairman to recuse himself of probing him. Honduras issues arrest warrant for former President Juan Hernández days after President Trump granted him pardon.
In business, Nigeria's headline inflation declines further to 14.45% year-on-year in November 2025, down from 16.05% in October.
And in sports, Nigeria Super Eagles in first training session as they prepare for Egypt's friendly ahead of the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations in Morocco.
Thank you for joining us. Tonight begins now. The Supreme Court has confirmed the President's constitutional power to declare a state of emergency in any state facing a potential breakdown of law and order or descent into anarchy. The decision arose from a legal challenge brought by Adamawa and 10 other states governed by the People's Democratic Party, PDP. The plaintiffs contested President Bola Tinubu's declaration of emergency rule in Rivers State, which included the 6-month suspension of elected state officials. The court dismissed this suit after upholding preliminary objections on jurisdictional grounds, but proceeded to address the merits, ultimately ruling in favor of the executive's action. In a lone dissenting voice, Justice Obande Ogunye argued that although the president may declare an emergency, this power cannot extend to suspending democratically elected officials, including governors, deputy governors, and lawmakers. GT Ogunye is the principal counsel at GT Ogunye Chambers. He joins me now to put this development in proper perspective. Thank you very much for giving us your time. I don't think we have him. We'll just try and reconnect and have that conversation. Okay, if you can hear me, sir, could you just acknowledge? I think your device is muted.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. So let's just establish something. Is this ruling, ordinarily we'll understand that it has affirmed what is in the Constitution, but does it also confirm or affirm that democratically elected officials can be suspended during the state of emergency declaration?
That's what the judgments of the Supreme Court is affirming. And I know that this was a big debate while the state of emergency in Rivers State lasted. And the central question focused then was whether, indeed, in exercising the declaration of the state of emergency powers under Section 305 of the Constitution, with the National Assembly concurring, if the President indeed could order the suspension of the governor of a state or suspend a democratically constituted House of Assembly. And on these opinions were divided, but it's like the Supreme Court has rested that today by interpreting emergency powers, which are not defined in the Constitution, or extraordinary powers or measures, which are not defined in the Constitution. And the judgment of the Supreme Court now is affirming without any doubt that suspension of the democratically constituted structures could be one of those extraordinary measures that could be taken under the declaration of the state of emergency.
Okay, what should Nigerians make of that one different opinion that says, although the Constitution empowers the president to take that decision, it doesn't seem to also give him the authority to suspend democratically elected governor? Help us understand that position and what Nigerians should make of it, even though we know now that the ruling has stated what is.
Well, there's a dissenting opinion on that issue, and a dissenting opinion is not a majority judgment. The court's judgment is the majority decision, even if there's a dissenting opinion. But I think that opinion speaks to the possibility of abuse of power, including the abuse of declaration of emergency powers by any incumbent president, who may indeed exploit this provision nefariously. And I think that the safeguard for me in a democracy such as ours is that a National Assembly should be alive to its responsibility. Too often people tend to think that it's only a president alone, acting alone, that can exercise emergency powers. No, if the president gives a notification of a state of emergency by way of proclamation, if the National Assembly within the stipulated time does not affirm it, that proclamation is spent. So indeed, we're dealing with concurrence of powers between the federal executive and federal legislature. So the third arm of the government is the judiciary, which is not part of it and which now had an opportunity to look at what have been done by the two arms of government. So I think that the safeguard could well be a National Assembly that is alive to its responsibilities, where there are representatives that can debate this matter and then disagree with a seemingly overbearing president, if that's the case. But once there's a concurrence, I think that the judiciary, the third arm of the bill, may not have much to do in trying to invalidate such a declaration.
Okay, given Nigeria's history, I mean, we had a military role, and we also have seen instances of executive overreach. Do you see this ruling as a step backward or forward for constitutional democracy, or just a necessary clarification in law?
Look, I know that this is an emotive subject. When the matter was vividly debated and contested in the public domain, when that declaration was done, many pundits, including legal giants, opined that although the Supreme Court had not dealt with the matter directly, on previous occasions the Supreme Court had declined jurisdiction in favor of those who wanted to trigger that jurisdiction, and that still re-echoed even into this judgment. Many people gave their enlightened opinion, but there are also a number of people who said that those who are saying that removal of a governor could not in any situation be part and parcel of the declaration of state of emergency were wrong. I'll give you an example, because on that occasion, I said that many people, are wrong on that matter by insisting that in all situations, a governor could never be removed under or suspended under a state of emergency. And I gave an example then, and I give it now, short, that if a House of Assembly of a state were to declare sovereignty from Nigeria, were to say that a state had become a country, pass a resolution and authorize a governor to carry out that resolution, by declaring himself the president. If a state of emergency is declared in Nigeria by a president, concurred with by the national legislature, would that government in that instance be removed? Would that House of Assembly in that instance be dissolved? Of course, this will happen. Not only that, that governor is likely to be arrested and charged with treason, even while his so-called term is still in existence. So I think that people who are discussing this matter largely then were just fixated on the political side. I insisted that the jurisprudential essence should have been looked at thoroughly, so that those who are excluding the possibility of a removal of the government in all situations will not say that. If the argument was that, oh, we have not reached that threshold for a suspension of the government, it will have been a different argument. But for them to insist that in no situation under a declaration of a state of emergency will the government be suspended, I think that they missed the point. And I agree with the Supreme Court on today's ruling, which is very rounded and robust, rather than the one-sided argument being peddled by a number of people while that matter lasts.
Now, you've touched a bit on it, but I still want to go ahead and ask, to what extent does this court's interpretation of extraordinary measures under Section 305, 3C and D risk undermining federalism principles? In Section 2, subsection 2, of the Constitution, how should this precedent apply to politically motivated declarations in opposition-led states?
I would say that, Nigerian federalism is defined by the Constitution. Nigeria is called a federation, and the powers are defined, shared between the central government and subnational government. Now we have local governments that are third, in the tiers. Now, my view is that the decision of the Supreme Court today has not in any way encouraged undermining of federalism or federalist principles as defined in the Nigerian Constitution, because we are practicing federalism in Nigeria as defined by the Nigerian Constitution. And if legislators, believe that that power under Section 305 should be further circumscribed or limited to prevent abuse. For example, in amending the Constitution, extraordinary powers can be defined under that section or under the general section of interpretation of the Constitution, so that you will not resort to the ordinary meaning or constitutional or dictionary meaning of extraordinary measures, so that it will not be nebulous and left open. We may then be prone to abuse and to the kind of undermining that you refer to in your question. If that does not happen, then even in the future, if there are situations in which you have the possibility of an emergency and there's going to be a declaration of emergency, the president will still be open to being accused of being whimsical and being subjective in determining what is extraordinary, because there will be no objective definition in the Constitution of what an extraordinary measure that should be taken is. I think that that's the best way to deal with it. I don't think that the Supreme Court in judgment today has encouraged any undermining of federalism in Nigeria or federalist principles.
Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts on this subject. We appreciate it.
Yes, my pleasure. Thanks for that.
Coming up, a court defers ruling on former Labour Minister Chris Ngige's bail request to December the 18th. Details when we come back. Glad you're still with us. You're watching tonight on News Central. A reminder of our top stories. Supreme Court affirms President's powers to suspend elected officials and declare state of emergency in any part of Nigeria. Former Attorney-General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, requests EFCC Chairman to recuse himself of probing him. Honduras issues arrest warrant for former President Juan Hernández days after President Trump granted him pardon. Nigeria's government has dismissed reports that its military aircraft was used for espionage in Burkina Faso. The claims centered on a Nigerian Air Force C-130 aircraft that was grounded in the Francophone country. Unconfirmed reports allege that a plane was involved in spying operations, and allegations the Nigerian government has debunked as false. The federal government clarified that the aircraft was on a routine ferry flight for scheduled maintenance and made a precautionary landing purely on safety grounds. Government officials warned that the spread of false narrative could undermine public confidence and potentially strain Nigeria's diplomatic relations within the region. For some perspective on this, I'm joined live in the studio by foreign relations and aviation expert Benga Unitilo. And on the other side is retired Major General Awal Aliyu. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being here. Benga, let me start with you. And why was this clarification necessary if these are claims and unverified? Who are the ones making this claim?
Well, this is a highly sensitive issue. And you know already there's a big fracture within ECOWAS states. And the narratives we are seeing out there, it's not emanating from any government on both sides. Nothing has been validated by any of the authorities. That's either people have been released, whether espionage has been committed. Before you can even get to the issue of espionage, talking about a flight was grounded based on espionage. But we all know that for every flight that runs within an airspace, there's always a flight plan. There's a trail, radar detection. These are facts you can provide based on ICAO standards. These are things that can be easily validated. So far, no facts is in the open to say exactly what the position of things are. It's only right for the Nigerian government to do what they've done, because you have not provided any counter-argument that is veritable by any independent source to say that what you are claiming actually took place.
Is this claim coming from Burkina Faso?
So far, have you heard any official statements or facts provided or narrative provided that is veritable, saying an act of espionage has been committed, beyond all the narrative we are seeing on social media?
I mean, let's turn to our end. The Nigerian military has explicitly debunked the espionage claims, and they've said it's a fabrication, while the aircraft lingered for days under investigation. What's evidentiary threshold should international aviation bodies apply to distinguish legitimate emergencies from potential intelligence probes?
Let me make a correction. You address me as a Major General. I'm not a Major General. I think the last time you also called me a senator, and I said I'm not a senator.
Okay.
So that, let's get this name.
Sorry, I missed what you said, sir.
First and foremost, the reality remains that it is not an espionage issue, not an espionage at all. It's well, the line is breaking. Are you there? Are you hearing me?
Yes, we can. Apologies for the mix-up, please.
No problem. Let's just roll. Let's roll.
Please go ahead. Go ahead.
Yes. Discussion. Yeah. It is Nigeria is not on espionage. No troop is. That is not the way to go for an espionage. Those espionage issue is being done on a very quiet and silent mode. It's always a very, very, very silent on that will not attract any attention, that will not call for any suspicion. But this is an open thing. Whatever transpired. But then for anybody to begin to think, or even the country itself, to suspect that the Nigerians are on espionage, that would be on a very, very wrong footing. And I also know that the military government of that country know very well, because the leader there is a military man, it's a military government, so they know very well what an espionage is. So I don't think, unless if somebody somewhere is trying to create an unnecessary tension and also try to attract attention to the country. Otherwise, it is nothing such. This is too big. C-130 is too big. A plane that will go for an espionage. I mean, you understand what I'm saying, and every Nigerian would also need to understand that clearly. I think what has happened that has been said by the two different, both Nigeria and then the Burkina Faso country, it's a clear thing. In any case, I think there's simple conflict there. As far as I am concerned, the conflict that is bringing all this unnecessary halu-balu is because Nigeria is a democratic nation, and then there was an attempt to overthrow a democratically elected president in Benin Republic, and Nigeria's president intervened by not allowing democracy to be truncated, and some group of people of some group of countries that the leaders are military, are being led under a military government, felt that why should Nigeria intervene and then restore democracy back? So therefore, this is an opportunity present itself for them to now really held onto the Nigerian aircraft and the Nigerian personnel, Air Force personnel, and begin to make, trying to make news, also try to create issue out of it. Ordinarily, under normal circumstances, this is something that would have happened and passed through without anybody knowing, just between the leaders of the two countries and possibly the airport authority, and it would have just been a simple matter that would have been put aside by now, and then both Nigeria and the country would have moved forward. But a lot of drama is being created out of it. A lot of sentiment is being cajoled to be attracted to the country. But like I said, it is simply because we have a president in Nigeria, in person of Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who believes in democracy, who believes in democratic leadership and government, and who intervene by truncating a military coup and restoring back a democratically elected president in Benin Republic. This is just a simple thing that is being played out. And no less, no more, no less. Otherwise, this shouldn't have been an issue.
All right, thank you very much, Awal. We'll come back to you. Aside the concerns being raised by Awal, a lot of warning has been issued out. The military is insisting, the federal government is saying that we should be careful about the claims that are being made because it risks inflaming regional tension. So I want you to paint us a picture of the implications we're looking at here if we continue to see these kinds of claim. And you said yourself that it was a good thing that the disclaimer was issued.
Yeah. So one of the first things I want to say, responding to some of the things the military Awal said, the first one is when you have a region run by the military, which was occasioned by a coup, it's most likely that everything that passes through that airspace, that will be high suspicion. That's one of the things we must establish, because what you have is there's a lot of UN humanitarian movement going on. There's a lot of military assets moving on within that airspace. Even within the Sahel, there's a lot of movement of activity. So it's only logical for that high level of suspicion to happen, which is not verifiable yet. It's only logical. On the other side, the question you'll be asking yourself, ECOWAS is already fractured. What will Nigeria gain by destabilizing Burkina Faso? So if we say there's a covert mission and to destabilize probably Burkina Faso, what would be the gain of Nigeria? Well, I would say there really is no gain, because it's going to put a lot more pressure on us, because now it will lead to what? More instability. It will lead to more refugee crisis, and it will go further down south. Nigeria is presently having its own concerns, dealing with a lot of insurgency issue, crisis around the Middle Belt, the northern region. So there's really no immediate benefit for Nigeria to go steer up the honestness within a sister West African state. The region is already boiling, and for Nigeria to say you want to further destabilize, no, there is no benefit to Nigeria.
Okay, but I think you answered the question in the terms of the implications, just escalating crisis in the region.
What is missing here is real because when you leave a vacuum, information is when you have information is warfare.
Yeah, but on the Nigerian side, there is some sort of
I understand. So there needs to be more of diplomatic engagement. Okay. Whether it's Air Force, senior officers of Air Force, or senior diplomats engaging. Because when you leave the atmosphere where information is now being managed, narrative-driven across social media, and that is what leads to all this kind of...
Yeah, there is a huge danger in that. Quickly, I'll speak to the continued detention of Nigerian personnel in Burkina Faso and the possibility of them being released. I mean, they are holding our aircraft, that's all right for now, but our personnel that are still being held, is there any information that we have on that, and what are your thoughts on the possible implication?
Well, I will be speaking about my thought of the implication of holding back the Nigerian Air Force personnel in Burkina Faso based on what transpired so far. And then, like you rightly know, the whole thing is as easy as it looks, but making it so difficult, even though it is not as difficult as people see it. But on the other side, it will be fair for Burkina-based country to simply release the Nigerian Air Force personnel to come back, even if they want to hold on to the aircraft for a certain period of time, because they cannot even continue to hold the aircraft permanently. They could hold it for a certain period of time while negotiations and discussions, diplomatic negotiations and discussions will be ongoing, and then before finally the aircraft will be released. Until before then, it will be right for the Burkinabe country, the leadership of Burkinabe, to see to it that the Nigerian Air Force personnel are released, because continuous detention of the Air Force personnel of Nigeria is not going to help the matters between the two countries. Right. That is the very truth of it. It might escalate the situation, which we don't want the situation being escalated. I heard from various interviews, I have seen various discussions that had taken place where some people are of the opinion that Nigeria should even go after Burkina Faso because we have more military power and equipment. But that is not the right way to go. Just like my brother there have directly put, diplomacy.
I think you both align in thoughts in some of the strategies that are needed, more diplomacy to have this issue resolved. Awal, thank you very much for speaking with us. Awal is a security strategist. We apologize again for the mishap, and we promise not to do it again. Thank you for your understanding.
Well, in any case, you were praying for me to become a senator. I claim it.
Oh, yeah. So from my lips to God's ears, thank you very much. Bega, thank you so much for being here in the studio with us as well.
Thank you very much.
All right. We're on a short break. More news when we return. Abuja High Court has adjourned to December the 18th for ruling on the bail application of former Minister of Labour and Employment, Chris Ngige. Defense counsel Patrick Ikwoto informed the court that the defense had filed a further affidavit with exhibits marked A to D, urging the court to admit the defendant to bail. He told the court that the attached exhibits include a report from the Home Office of the Nigerian High Commission in London indicating that Ngige had misplaced his travel documents. Prosecuting counsel told the court that Ngige had earlier been granted administrative bail with his passport released to him for medical treatment abroad on the condition that it would be returned upon his arrival. And one of our lead stories tonight, a former Attorney-General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Abubakar Malami, SAN, has demanded the immediate recusal of the Chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, from his ongoing investigation, alleging bias, personal vendetta, and political persecution linked to his recent defection to the African Democratic Congress. In a strongly worded press release issued on Monday by his media aide, Malami accused the EFCC of conducting what he described as an illegal detention, media harassment, and procedural abuse, insisting that the probe against him was not driven by law enforcement consideration, but by deep-seated historical animosity on the part of the EFCC leadership. The Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission has called for support for Nigeria's new tax reforms, saying that they are aimed at improving fiscal efficiency, expanding the nation's revenue base, and supporting sustainable national development. This was as the Commission brought together key stakeholders in Abuja to deliberate on ways to strengthen Nigeria's fiscal system and deepen understanding of the new laws ahead of the January 2026 implementation date. Blessings Aigbe compiled this report.
It was a gathering of policymakers, revenue authorities, and private sector leaders to discuss on how the nation will achieve its fiscal development goals. Experts present say that the new tax reform is aimed at improving fiscal efficiency, expanding revenue base, and supporting sustainable national development.
A revolutionary reform, which we feel strongly that is going to simplify the tax system, is going to get more revenue to the Federation, and is going to make investments more friendly in Nigeria. All these things were done in comparative analysis with other similar countries, and that this is a way to transform the nation for better revenue.
These reforms also promote transparency and compliance by modernizing tax administration and strengthening the capacity of revenue-generating agencies through digitalization. First, the CBN remains central to safeguarding macroeconomic stability, which forms the foundation upon which fiscal reforms of the Tax Act 2025 can succeed.
Stakeholders say that the new tax reform will improve institutional coordination, reduce revenue leakages, create employment opportunities, and boost public confidence in the nation's tax system.
When tax policies are clear, predictable, and business-friendly, enterprises are better positioned to invest, expand, create employment, and contribute more meaningfully to national revenue.
The reforms are positioned to reduce leakages, enhance value for money, and create a more sustainable and fiscally responsible revenue system that supports national development priorities.
The Ministry of Solid Minerals Development is fully committed to strengthening governance, formalizing mining, enhancing compliance, and working closely with relevant fiscal institutions to ensure that revenues from the sector are transparently captured and efficiently deployed to the national development.
The Commission says that the outcome from the discourse will improve tax administration and create a more transparent and business-friendly environment.
An atmosphere rich in African culture and celebration marked the 10th anniversary of Moneda, a company that says access to well-managed capital remains critical to Africa's economic growth. Industry leaders and stakeholders gathered in Lagos to reflect on a decade of enterprise, building sustainability and financial inclusion. News Central's Placidia Iwekulie reports.
From music to fashion, Africa's diversity was on full display as Moneda marked 10 years of growth and impact. What began as a single desk has evolved into a financial platform supporting businesses across multiple sectors and countries across the continent. The company says capital, when responsibly managed, has the power to accelerate Africa's development, a principle that has guided its operations over the past decade.
We're very proud of the fact that we've kept integrity and we've kept trust with our investors, with our financiers. I think that's the most important thing.
Impact is a business well thought out. So for Monida, it's about impact. And that purpose is what has been driving Monida.
Through deliberate funding structures and long-term partnerships, Monida says it has remained committed to supporting sustainable enterprise growth.
Our plan after getting our license in Mauritius, a global fund management license, is to build on that mandate. We're going to go out and raise $100 million in our first fund. And that fund is going to primarily be from Africans. So what is a bit unusual is that we're saying categorically that we're not primarily interested in foreign capital. We believe that Africans can, support this fund. The purpose of the fund is African, transformation.
At this point in time, our studies show us clearly that Africa is a place to invest. Africa finance is in Africa, and Africa finance can be utilized properly to be able to develop Africans.
Speakers at the event commended the company for remaining true to its sustainability goals, building trust and maintaining credibility in an increasingly competitive financial landscape.
Over these last 10 years, you have demonstrated capacity, raising over $190 million US for various investments, and have expanded to 7 African countries and counting, builds business associates and partnerships across all these countries. Taken together, this is an excellent story. It's a success story. It's an exciting story for a young 10-year-old Nigerian company to have made such progress and such strides within such a short time.
As part of the celebration, Monida recognized and honored its early enablers, individuals and institutions. The company credits with believing in its vision at inception and supporting its journey from idea to impact.
I would say I'm proud because in 1 year I've gotten this recognition and it means a lot to me.
After a decade of growth, Monida says its focus remains clear, expanding access to responsible finance while supporting Africa's drive for economic transformation. As the company looks ahead, stakeholders say the challenge will be sustaining impact while scaling across the continent.
Away from our shores, at least 37 people have been killed after torrential rain triggered sudden flooding in the Atlantic coastal province of Safi, south of the capital, Rabat. Moroccan state television reports that just 1 hour of intense rainfall was enough to overwhelm the historic old town of Safi. Homes and shops were flooded, cars were swept away, and several roads in the surrounding areas were cut off. Local authorities say at least 14 people are currently receiving medical treatment as emergency crews continue rescue and recovery operations. To the latest in the war in Ukraine, talks between Ukraine and the U.S. aimed at reaching a peace deal with Russia are continuing in Berlin for a second day. Zelensky and his chief negotiator met U.S. envoy and Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, for 5 hours on Sunday, joined by German Chancellor. Ahead of the start of the meeting, Zelensky signaled he would give up ambitions to join NATO in exchange for security guarantees. Honduras has issued an arrest warrant for former President Juan Orlando Hernández, just days after he was released from a U.S. federal prison following a presidential pardon by Donald Trump. Honduras Attorney-General announced on Monday that an arrest warrant has been issued for Hernández on charges including money laundering and fraud. In a post on social media platform X, the Attorney General said he had instructed Honduran authorities and the International Police Agency, Interpol, to locate and arrest the former leader. Tonight returns with business, sports, and entertainment news. Do stay with us.
This segment by MoneyPoint.
Talking business now, Nigeria's headline inflation rate declined further to 14.45% year-on-year in November 2025, down from 16.05% in October. This is according to the National Bureau of Statistics. The easing reflects moderate consumer price pressures under a newly rebased consumer price index, with 2024 replacing 2009 as the base year. The CPI rose to 130.5 points from 128, I beg your pardon, 0.9 in October, 1.6% point increase. On a month-on-month basis, inflation accelerated to 1.22% from 0.93%, indicating continued price increases despite the annual showdown. We also tell you that the Dangote Group has appointed renowned economist and former Central Bank of Nigeria Director Dr. Mahmood Azan as its group chief economist to strengthen economic advisory capacity amid global and domestic markets, and including, of course, volatility. In his new role, Azan will advise on economic strategy, market trends, and policy implications, reported directly to the group president, Aliko Dangote. It brings over 30 years of experience in economic policy, monetary management, and financial regulation. When we're back from this break, we will bring you stock market reports. The Nigerian stock market ended the session largely unchanged, with the all-share index closing at 149,437.8 points, of course, flat at 0.0%. Basically, market capitalization over around 95.27 trillion naira, reflecting a session of balanced buying and selling. We look at sector performance to tell you that the banking sector led the gainers with a 0.89% growth, driven by renewed interest in stocks such as GTCO and Zenith Bank. Insurance followed closely with 0.87%, supported by modest gains in custodian. Well, oil and gas dropped 0.05%, of course, on slight pressure in Owando, as we also see that consumer goods dropped 0.79%, as sell-offs in Nigerian breweries and Dangote Sugar weighed on the sector. Industrial goods ended flat, of course, with Dangote Cement and other cement majors trading sideways. So gains in banking and insurance were just enough to offset losses, leaving the broader market at a standstill. That's it on business. I am Lekon Omobanjo.
This segment is brought to you by MoneyPoint.
In sports news tonight, Super Eagles preparations for the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations in Morocco received a boost as Paul Onuachu, Frank Onyeka, Calvin Bassey, Alex Iwobi, Ademola Lookman and 12 others arrived in Cairo on Monday, joining earlier arrivals Francis Uzoho, Stanley Nwabali, Fisayo Dele-Bashiru and Ebenezer Akinsomiru. The 15 players in camp, now 20, will participate, or rather, they are currently participating in the first training session inside the main bowl of the Cairo International Stadium. The camp also serves as a build-up to Tuesday's international friendly against Egypt. After the friendly, the squad will fly to first Morocco, where they will prepare for their Group C AFCON matches against Tunisia, Tanzania, and Uganda. Organizers of the 2025 Obasa Games have hailed the growing impact of the grassroots sports initiative after Future Stars Football Academy won the football title, edging goal-getters 6-5 on penalties in the final at Anwar Islam Model College, Agege. Chairman of the main organizing committee, Vinod Obasa, said the tournament continues to engage youths, curb social vices, and create opportunities across Lagos State. The final ended 1-1 in regulation time, marking Future Stars' best outing after a quarter-final exit in the debut tournament last year. The champions received 3 million naira from a 12 million naira prize pool. Lobi Stars have suspended technical advisor Bala Mohammed following a poor run of results in the Nigeria National League. The decision was taken on Monday after an emergency meeting of the club's interim management committee in Makurdi. The club cited unsatisfactory performance, with the team recording just 7 points from 6 matches. Lobi Stars currently sit 6th in their group, falling short of expectations for a side targeting an immediate return to the top flight. Mohammed has been directed to hand over duties to Chief Coach John Onu with immediate effect. And that's all on Sports News Tonight. Entertainment is next with Sam Dandy.
And now in entertainment. Of course, now a federal high court, the Federal Road Safety Commission has put out a statement now. They have announced plans to prosecute popular TikToker and content creator Pella after a dramatic clash on the Lekki Ekpe Expressway that was being live streamed on social media. Now, in published footage, Pella is seen handling his phone while driving, an act that the FRSC says violates Nigeria's traffic safety laws and endangers other road users. Now, the Corps has directed the Lagos State Command to pursue charges of reckless and distracted driving in court. The incident, which resulted in Pele being hospitalized, has sparked intense conversation online about the responsibilities of influencers and the dangers of creating risky content for views. Well, that one has people talking. We're looking forward to seeing how it pans out. But let's move from here to out of Africa. Hollywood legend Rob Reiner, the acclaimed director behind classics like When Harry Met Sally and This Is a Spinal Tap, and his wife Michelle Singer Reiner were tragically found stabbed to death in their Los Angeles home, prompting a major homicide investigation. Now, the couple's bodies were discovered by family members, and law enforcement has launched a full probe into the circumstances surrounding their deaths. Now, their 32-year-old son, Nick Reiner, who has had well-documented struggles with addiction, was arrested at the scene and is being held on a $4 million bail as authorities pursue murder charges. A lot has happened in 2025, and this one maybe might take the cake, but we're looking forward to seeing how it pans out. Those are the biggest stories in entertainment. I am Sam Dandy.
That's the news tonight. Do send your eyewitness report to the number on your screen. You can follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch live on DSTV channel 422, Gold TV channel 23, Star Times channel 274, Apple TV, and on YouTube. Thank you for being here. Good night.